We're about to go live. It should pop up a little thing on your screen. It says is now streaming on live on Facebook. Well, welcome everyone to our town hall tonight to talk about parental rights here in Wyoming. And specifically, we want to talk about what is going on down in Rock Springs with the school district down there and the family that has now sued the school district, and how the legislature could have and should have and hopefully will in the future address this situation. So I'm going to start out by just going back in history a little bit and having Mark Jennings, who brought and got passed the Parental Rights Act, which is in our statutes right now. And Mark Jennings was my predecessor as chairman of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. And Mark, if you would just take us through what you did a few years ago when you got the Parental Rights Act passed, and what your thinking was, and how that has affected the state, and particularly this situation.
Sure, John. So what most people don't realize is that parental rights, although considered a fundamental right, is not in our U.S. Constitution or our state constitution, and was not in our statutes. And so it was basically being spouted forth by the legal minds that the precedent was there and therefore it would never be challenged. But as I started in about a decade ago, we were seeing some serious challenges to parental rights already start. Jessica Peltier was on the East Coast, taken away from her parents for about 2 years because the state disagreed with her personal medical doctors. And so it took almost 2 years for them to get their child back. And so there was a move to get that put into state constitutions. And ultimately, we'd like to see it in the federal constitution, because it is and should always be respected as a fundamental right. I don't think our founders put it there because they never dreamed that we would attack parents' rights as anything but a fundamental right. And so with that, it took 2 years, had a very unfriendly Senate president towards parental rights. He said, if you want this to advance, you will agree that parents have to prove they're fit parents first. And so I withdrew it for the second year. And in the third year, I brought it back and it passed overwhelmingly. I think out of the House, it was 59-1. And in the Senate, it was also very well. And so we got it. We do now have it in statute. I will tell you that on reflection, I wish I had put a penalty in it, because what we see is school boards and other people who are basically ignoring it. And that's where we're at now. Wow,
that is something that it's never been in statute until you got it in. What year again did you get it into statute?
That would have been in 17 or 18.
Okay, so it's only been in there for a couple of years as far as statute, but it's been the ongoing practice for since the beginning of the state and the beginning of the nation. And I think all of us on this particular panel agree that that's the way it should be. Well, during this last session, we had a couple of bills that were moving forward with the idea of protecting this parental right in more particular areas where our school boards were starting to show that they didn't, they weren't going to honor parental rights. In fact, the Rock Springs School District actually came out, and a few others did as well, and said that they would not be notifying parents if a child chose to change their gender or change at least their name. And so the school districts determined that it wasn't their responsibility to inform the parent of the change in their child's mental status. And that's what these bills were trying to address. And the first one I'd like to talk about, our panel to talk about, is House Bill 78. And this is one that the speaker assigned to the Judiciary Committee. And with that, I'll bring on one of the co-sponsors, Jeremy Harrelson, the vice chair of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus.
Thank you, John. So, House Bill 78, Representative Clark Stith brought this bill to my attention and said, "Hey, looking for co-sponsors on this bill." And the concept behind House Bill 78 is a good concept. It's a concept that would have extended the parental rights applicability onto two other avenues. The first being the judicial proceeding or process, the second being state or local educational agencies, school district, boards of trustees, commissioners of schools under Title 21 of the Wyoming statute. So with that, when this bill came before the Judiciary Committee, which I do stand on, one of the things we did not realize is the fact that on that page one, that Romanet I, the judicial proceedings, that created a lot of I guess a lot of friction. And as we started understanding it further, we understood that this was being brought to address a single situation that was probably a little personal. And so what happened was the concept of the school system and our school boards was kind of lost because of this judicial, and we had just kind of a landslide of comment on that. And so we got to see kind of the edges unraveling on this bill. So one thing you have to understand, good bills can be bad if they're not properly vetted and properly walked through. And so this is a good concept, but it was probably a faulty vehicle that was moving forward with that. And I'm going to kind of hand it over to Rachel as she talks about what that looked like as she was vice chair on that committee.
Thank you, Representative Harrelson. So yes, I too serve on the House Judiciary Committee, and we did see that bill in committee. And when that bill was presented, it received a lot of testimony in opposition of it, specifically from many attorneys and different lobbyists representing private attorneys. And so there was a lot of pushback. Mind you, all committee members were present during that meeting, and there was no motion to move that bill forward. So it essentially died in committee. I don't think that it did what we need to move forward, what we need to start doing moving forward when it comes to parental rights. I think that we have a great state statute, but we need to make it stronger. And I can tell you, I recently read a survey, a national survey that was done by Parents Defending Education. There was a poll that was taken, and it stated that 71% of voters support legislation requiring schools to inform parents if their child wants to change their gender identity. And I think that's where there's a lot of concern across the state of Wyoming when it comes to strengthening our parental rights legislation. And I know that there's somebody else on the panel that kind of wants to talk a little bit more about our forthcoming efforts.
And so
go ahead.
I'll dive in real quick and kind of cap this up. So because I was a co-sponsor on 78 and didn't actually make motion to move forward, obviously that's kind of uncommon. And so I wanted to kind of explain what I did after the fact. Talking to the primary sponsor, Representative Stith, I told him, I said, if you're willing to work on some amendments that'll help fix these issues, these issues that everyone was coming out and saying, hey, this is a major problem, I would ask for a reconsideration. So one of the cool things, it can be cool and sometimes can be frustrating, that we have in the legislature is that we can reconsider a bill. We can bring it back up. So I had the ability to call for a reconsideration of House Bill 78 in Judiciary Committee if he would have paved the way to bring this bill into a status or a state that would have actually accomplished what we needed it to, and done it in a way that would have been able to work with both sides, not only the obviously protecting parental rights, but also not jeopardizing the judicial process and proceedings. And so that wasn't something that happened. I mean, the primary sponsor obviously was upset that that bill didn't move out of committee, but he wasn't willing to bring forward a solution for me. He wasn't willing to work with others to get my seconds. And so we were able to, I mean, we tried to get this to be our vehicle moving forward, another vehicle moving forward for protecting parental rights and ultimately addressing this glaring situation and glaring problem that we have in our states, and that is schools not keeping parents in the loop when it comes to their children and the decisions that these children are making without parental involvement nor even knowledge. And so 78 had a good chance, and I believe it could have been a vehicle we could have used, but in the end, that was not something that was pushed forward or brought forward, and so it did die for lack of motion.
I was just thinking, I read in the Cowboy State Daily that Clark Stiff, the Speaker Pro Tem, who brought this bill, the one that you were just talking about, had added this part that would have required the school district to do the notification and follow the Parental Rights Act that Mark Jennings got passed. All that was a bit of an afterthought. It was put on based on the fact that Rock Springs School District had come out and said, we are not going to honor the parents in this situation. So it was an add-on to the bill. And as you mentioned, Jeremy, the bill originally was dealing with the courts based on a court case that Clark Stiff was involved in. And it was a parental rights issue, but it was more about custody in that particular case. And that's the piece that brought the angst from the attorneys that Rachel had mentioned. So this bill wasn't originally meant to address the issue in Rock Springs that we're talking about tonight. There was another bill that was meant to address that issue, and it was solely focused on the school districts and the school boards. And that was Senate File 117, which was brought by Senator Dockstetter. And that bill, by the way, I want to back up just a moment. The discussion we just had about what happened to House Bill 78, all that took place on the first couple of days. I believe it was the first day of deliberation within the Judiciary Committee. Is that correct? Rachel and Jeremy? First day. So that happened very, very early on. In the meantime, Senate File 117, brought by Dockstetter to address this very issue, was moving through the Senate and eventually passed the Senate. And with that, it came over to the House, and then it was sitting in the drawer of the Speaker. At that point, at this point right now, I'll ask Jeanette Ward, a new member of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, to tell us about her efforts in regards to Senate File 117.
Thanks, Representative Bear. Yes, I made a motion to pull Senate File 170 or 117 from the Speaker's desk because he never assigned it to a committee, which he had planned to let it die without going anywhere. I made a motion to suspend the rules to pull it out of the Speaker's desk, and my efforts were unsuccessful as a majority of the Republicans voted with the Democrats to keep it in his desk. And we saw that a lot. The vote was 26 to 36, if I recall correctly, like many votes were over the course of the legislature. So Senate File 117 would have prohibited teaching about gender identity and sexuality, sexual orientation to kindergarten through third grade. And it would have prohibited teaching about gender and sexuality in a way that's not developmental appropriate to all grades. So it had those provisions. It also required that schools inform parents of changes in their child's mental health, meaning pronoun, for example, pronoun usage, and that applied to all grades. In that way, it would have prevented what's happening in the Sweetwater County and Rock Springs because it said that a school district shall not adopt any policies or procedures that prohibit school district personnel from notifying a student's parent or guardian about the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, a change in related services, or monitoring. And secondly, that the school district shall not adopt procedures that encourage or have the effect of encouraging a student to withhold from a parent or guardian information about the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being. So the situation in Rock Springs would have been addressed by this bill. We were told that this kind of thing was not happening in Wyoming, and here it is happening in Wyoming. And not only is it happening, there's a lawsuit about it.
So,
In fact,
Jen,
sure, go ahead.
Can I get you to back up just a moment? How long had that bill been in the speaker's drawer when you made your motion?
Oh, a while. Is it
As I
30
recall, it
days?
had been more than 3 weeks, more than 20 days.
Yes. Yes, I think it was 38, if I remember correctly, but I'm not quite so sure.
So it'd been in there a long time, and we've been kind of talking around this court case. Can you kind of share with the viewers what the court case is really about, and what kind of the history is there for the family, and what's gone on in Rock Springs?
Sure. My understanding of the situation in Rock Springs is that the school district allowed a student to change their pronouns and how they were addressed without telling the parents. And so the parents were rightfully upset about that and are suing the school district. That should never happen in any school district. And obviously that's why they're upset.
Now, in that case, I believe that the mother is actually an employee of the school district, not teaching at the school where her daughter was. And she became aware of this by talking to other teachers that were familiar with her daughter in the school where her daughter was. So
Okay.
she didn't find this out. The family did not find this out from the school at all. They found it out in a roundabout way. Obviously, they were upset. According to the comments in the newspaper, the family made every effort to get the school district to change their policy in their regard, and the school district came back and said, "No, we will not do that." And
Yes, in fact, the school district's policy, and I have a portion of it in front of me. It says that if a student is requesting the use of a transgender name and or pronoun, we will honor their request. It is also not our obligation to notify the parent of this request, and we will not do so. Shockingly. You're muted there, John.
I'm going to take just a moment right now and go back to Mark Jennings. Mark, do you believe that the act, as you had drafted it and it got passed in 2018, do you think that it really had carved out an opportunity for school districts to treat parents this way?
Absolutely not. I supported both of those opportunities. The one with Clark Stith actually came the year before, and I was a co-sponsor because it only addressed the court. And the Supreme Court was the only one that actually tried to defy this. If I've got just a second, John, let me read to you why these people are already in violation of statute. And I was supportive of these new attempts, but the very first paragraph says the liberty of a parent to the care, custody, and control of their child is a fundamental right that resides first in the parent. I don't know how you get around that. Care, custody, and control. That includes and we had this debate at the very beginning when we were trying to pass this. Schools came in and fought us because they wanted the parents' rights to stop at the threshold of the door of the school. And we actually won that. The second part makes it extremely clear, and it also uses the legal terminology that in a lawsuit should be very compelling for a court to strike down this school down there. The second part says the state or any agency or political subdivision of the state shall not infringe the parental right as provided under this section without demonstrating that the interest of the government as applied to the parent or child is a compelling, and that's a legal terminology there, compelling state interest addressed by the least restrictive means. So they have to turn back and go to the parent first. And to me, it's very clear, and they're very much in violation. I actually read this along with some constitutional stuff to our school board, basically got the same response. They didn't care.
Jeanette, I'd like to go back to you and just let you finish up with any other comments you have about either the case or Senate File 117. And then I'm going to address where the Wyoming Freedom Caucus is going to try to take this in the future.
Thank you, Representative Bear. I was just making the point that shockingly, it's amazing the school district's policy, and it is in direct violation, as Representative Jennings said, of already existing statutes. So I'm really supportive of these parents, and I hope they win their suit. Reading some other portions of the school district's policy, it says under preferred or chosen names procedure, it says, as you become acquainted with your students, you may encounter students wishing to use a preferred or chosen name. A preferred or chosen name is any name a student wishes to use other than their legal name. And then it gives examples. It says that Sweetwater County School District Number 1 is committed to promoting an educational environment that is supportive and respectful to all students, not to parents, apparently. That's just my interjection. And it says calling a person by their preferred name and pronoun shows respect and contributes to the district's commitment to providing a safe and non-discriminatory educational environment. Except the parents, except you're discriminating against the parents. And then it says, accordingly, staff must use a student's preferred or chosen name or pronoun in verbal, written, and electronic communications. I mean, that just tramples on the First Amendment rights of teachers. What if I, as a teacher, object to calling someone by the wrong pronoun because I live in reality?
Yeah, what if? Well, we're approaching the end of our time that we really have to discuss the issue, because I wanted to give anyone who's listening the opportunity to ask questions of this panel, and we would answer them. But briefly, I'm just going to tell the listeners that we are drafting our own bill to bring into the next session here in February of 2024. It is much like Senate File 117, but it is much more aggressive as far as covering all grades, and that includes the instruction portion, the portion where parents are to be notified of any changes in their child's status, and also providing a private right of action for the parents. So this bill will actually have some teeth in it. We will see. It will take a 2/3 majority to introduce this bill into the House, and we will see if the body is prepared to do what is right, as it did back in 2018 in passing the Parental Rights Act. So with that, Jesse, we're going to turn to you and just ask if there's any questions for the panel at this time, and then I will pass those questions out to members of the members of the panel. Sorry.
Yes, so there's one question on Facebook, and then I have a couple of questions that I received from some parents who are actually at school board meetings right now around the state. And so really quickly, I thought I'd address the first one on Facebook. Someone is asking Representative Jennings, what's the statute number of your parental rights bill that was enacted in 2019? And I have the link to that. I can post it, but it's Wyoming Statute 14-2-206.
14-2-206. Thank you for bringing that up, Jesse.
Yes. And then a question that I received earlier from a parent who's at a school board meeting right now. Why did the speaker decide to hold Senate File 117 in his drawer? What was his reasoning behind holding that?
So, Jeanette, you may recall the debate back and forth between yourself and he as to why he would not move it forward. I don't think he got into the merits of the bill itself, but there was a op-ed where he explained that he believed that this was not happening, and he was specific about the teaching of grades 3 through kindergarten through 3 of gender or sexual items within their education. But the bill itself covered a whole lot of other areas, and to say that one area is not happening does not address the others. And this bill definitely would have addressed the issue by informing the parents of a change in the child's mental status. Would you agree?
Absolutely. In fact, he argued that this type of teaching is not happening in Wyoming, and that the bill stripped the local control from school boards. Well, I think the most local control of all is parents.
Well said. Also, can any of us say for certain that something's not happening throughout the state? This is clearly, this is something that's happening nationwide. It is definitely a concern that parents are bringing up. And Rachel, I'm going to turn to you right now and just have you add one more little piece. I think you've got some information about grassroots bringing action as far as pushing on the legislature to do something about this.
Yes, thank you, Representative Bear. So the grassroots they're obviously very mobilized on this issue. And I can tell you in Park County, the GOP passed a resolution that basically duplicated Senate File 117 and expanded it actually from kindergarten through 12th grade with the same mission as the bill. And so that resolution was sent to local school boards, encouraging them to implement this policy that currently does not exist. And I did read in a Wyoming news outlet that Sheridan did this as well. And I believe there's a push statewide from the party to do so as well. And so it's great to see the groundswell on this issue, because there's definitely the support for it throughout the state. The prevalence of transgender students in Wyoming schools is there, and never has there been a more important time for parents to be informed as to what's going on with the health and wellness of their own children.
Very good. Thank you. Jesse, do we have any other questions before we sign off?
Yes, so there's one more question that fits perfectly with what was just stated from another parent that's at a school board meeting. What can parents do to help get this done next session? It being a budget session especially, but what can parents do who either can't make it to Cheyenne or are in Cheyenne? How can they help to support these efforts?
I'm going to turn to Representative Jennings to just elaborate, and then maybe off to Representative Harrelson to give us their input on what parents can do.
We've been trying in School District 2 in Sheridan. We've backed parents all the way out of the room, down the hallway, down the stairs, and they just have to keep very vigilant and be very loud and very vocal. And I have a little bit different view of this because I believe that it's already covered in statute. Now, I think that we should probably do two things: run the bill and then also run a cause for action, so that it bolsters what's already there. And if school boards feel threatened by a lawsuit and lots of angry parents, they're very entrenched, but they need to stay at this fight. Their kids are worth it.
Jeremy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll dive in real quick. Thank you, Representative Bear. So one of the things, these are two fronts we're talking about, school boards being one, legislation being the second. So the question is, how do we help with legislation when we can't be in Cheyenne? Obviously, call legislators, have a personal conversation with legislators. The other is writing emails. Just give you guys a point. Mass emails get mass deleted. So write a personal email with your name, with your story, with your situation, with your request. And please make it very, very, I mean, we don't need a book. Let's make it simple. Let's make it concise. Just in the middle of the fray of legislation, you have 200, 300, 400 emails a day, and you just don't have time to read them all. And so those personal emails, those are the ones that are going to be read. So those are two ways you can do that. If it gets introduced and we get through the 2/3, be a part of the testimony. You can do it via Zoom, through the WYOLEG web page, and through our YouTube channel, the legislative YouTube channel. So be a part of that. On the school board level, my challenge is, you know what, make your face a normal face at school board meetings. School boards should be held accountable by parents who show up every single meeting, every single time. Pack out that house, not just when it's something hot and contentious, every single time, and be involved in the decision-making process, so that whenever because majority of these school board members are parents too, or grandparents, and they need to understand that, you know what, you're in it together. You're there to support them, to help them, to champion them, and to keep them accountable. Because we should be there honoring these school board members, but at the same time, if they're not doing what they're meant to be doing, we should be also making sure that they know that we see them. We see the decisions they're making, and we'll remember those in the next time that we're voting. And then the other is this: God, how do I help in the realm of running? What position am I supposed to hold? That's always the conversation that we have to have. If you don't like what you're seeing, be a solution. You hold that power inside of you. So at any time, if that's like, man, I'm interested in running, where's the next step? Look one of us up. We would love to help you be able to make those next steps. You guys, the attack on the family is only beginning. We are not going to see it let up. They want to attack our marriages. They want to attack our children. They want to attack the unborn babies. They want to take out the nucleus of the family. And if they can do that, they can take out our nation. So just remember, they're not going to relent, so we can't either.
Well said, Jeremy. Way to go. I feel like running now. I don't know about the rest of you, but that was very good. And with that, we're out of time. I'm going to have a sign off now, but thank you all for coming and watching, and thank you all for being on the panel tonight. God bless you all, and good night.